Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome in to episode 33, Kayfabe Kouncil, the show where we review and critique news topics and segments in the world of professional wrestling. My name is Pretty Tony, and alongside me, as always, it's TF Joker. Joker, what's the crack, brother? What's going on?
We're about 7 days into 2023, and I find myself in survival mode, PT. I've no idea what's going on from day to day. It's like 6 months ago. Why is the world already weird?
Well, first off, Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you as well.
We're into the crux of 2023 and our first show proper in 2023. And we are only roughly a week's time into 2023. And it's been quite the interesting series of events. Banger matches, returns, debuts, and return of another sort. Just got announced in the couple past days that seems to have rocked the world of professional wrestling. What is going on?
Yeah, I mean, don't worry, we're not going to talk about that return, at least not until, the end of the world happens and all our fears are realized and, the bad stuff happens. So that's fine. But everything else has just been weird.
Weird is definitely an understatement. So perhaps we got a small reprieve from a trip into paradise for just a little bit, but now we are on at the gates of something potentially very, very strange and awkward that we, like you aforementioned, will have us going back to about 6 months ago in the summertime. So begs to be
Yeah.
seen at the moment, but yeah, certainly interesting news yet again to start our year off.
In a weird fashion. We thought it was going to be good, and just in case anybody is wondering, yes, we're talking about the recent news of VKM. No, I don't want to talk about him, but just in case anybody was confused by us trying to dodge what was being said, I thought I'd point that out. Um, yeah, we thought we were going to continue, and that the only thing that we were going to have to worry about in WWE was whether or not they were going to pull the trigger on ending the bloodline, or when Cody was coming back to win everything and just be the big dog. But yeah, like other than that, this past week has shown us some really good wrestling matches. And one heck of a Wrestle Kingdom that I thoroughly enjoyed. Anybody who caught our shows previously will know that my first foray into the G1 climax, the summertime there, I absolutely loved every single second of it. And yeah, Wrestle Kingdom 17 was an absolute banger.
Oh, 100%. It was just so many good matches there. Arguably, it was one of the kind of better ones in a quite number of years. Obviously, with the crux of the kind of pandemic and things of such, there was folks that were unavailable to travel to Japan and kind of the sort of crowd situation. So, from a presentation, from a talent standpoint, it was a little bit different in the last couple ones. That notwithstanding, this particular Wrestle Kingdom, very, very strong. It reminds me of ones that were like 3 or 4 years ago, where it's just, again, taking nothing away from the roster, but just, yeah, just loaded with talent and just really strong matches. And I mean, honestly, for the most part, if you're not familiar with New Japan Pro Wrestling, the Wrestle Kingdom is the January 4 show that happens every year that is equivalent to a WrestleMania for those folks familiar with WWE. But yeah, just a really, really phenomenal show. And we're going to chat a little bit about it today.
Yeah, at least a couple of matches anyway. A couple of revelations, things that happened, some that were way better than others.
All right, well, as we get into the show here, we appreciate you folks joining us, and we hope that you had a wonderful 2022 and Happy New Year to you for 2023. All right, as a reminder, you can find us in video form, youtube.com/KayfabeKouncil, and in audio form, wherever you get your podcasts from. On this week's episode, we look at Kenny Omega and Kazuchika Okada win championships at Wrestle Kingdom 17. And Mercedes Monè makes her debut challenges Kairi for the IWGP Women's Championship.
Money.
100%. But coming up first, Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay have quite the match at Wrestle Kingdom 17.
That is one way to describe it, PT. Definitely a contest between two athletes happened. Uh, I'm not 100% sure everybody would be so agreeable as to call this quite a match. Some people probably out there absolutely loathe both of these individuals. I think the performance that they gave us was fantastic. Um, and honestly, I just love these two guys. I think they're great.
Quite the interesting character, too. Obviously, folks are probably a little bit more familiar with Kenny Omega from now mainstream with AEW in the United States. I mean, he's coming off of his work from New Japan and being pretty much the number one gaijin or non-Japanese wrestler there for quite the number of years, especially leading up in late 2017 to 2018, and then leaving for AEW in the US in 2019. But Will Ospreay, fantastic talent, the aerial assassin. He, as well as Jay White, which we will talk about later on in the show, are pretty much the two guys that I would see from a Gaijin standpoint stepped up and have been sort of the top non-Japanese talent in New Japan after Kenny Omega left. And as we'll talk about in this show, these guys just are showing what they are, what they're worth, and just putting on performances that definitely deserve a main event of the major show of the company.
Oh, 100%. Both of these guys, both the guys you mentioned, Jay White and Will Ospreay, fantastic representations of foreign talent in New Japan. Um, the both of these matches were obviously it being a double main event. Both of these matches being about 35 minutes long, and yeah, it was a perfect end to a really good show. Um, like I can't say enough good things about it, honestly.
I would tend to agree. So, well, for this one, we'll just talk a little bit about the match and likewise with the Jay White and Kazuchika Okada match. Just kind of got thoughts and impressions and kind of just what we are just impressions and feels regarding it. So, as we get into the Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay match, this is actually only the second one-on-one match between these two men. They have faced off one other time in PWG, Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. That was on December 12th, 2015, where Kenny won over Will Ospreay. But into the match at Wrestle Kingdom 17, this was definitely a high intensity matchup between these two. Early in the match, they foreshadowed some of that intensity to come by each competitor throwing the other into the ringside barrier very viciously. Omega even takes off one of the turnbuckle pads, which Kenny ends up kicking Ospreay full force into said exposed turnbuckle, which looked absolutely nasty.
Oh yeah.
The two men make their way onto the apron. Ospreay hits Kenny with a stiff thrust kick, and Ospreay goes for an Oz cutter off the ring post. Kenny holds on to the ring ropes. And Ospreay takes that nasty spill onto the apron, and that the sound of Will just hitting the apron, that thud. Oh, that was brutal. Kenny then pulls out a table and lays it on top of Ospreay and hits a double stomp, which actually Kenny breaks through the table. And for those familiar, Japanese tables are very hard. They're usually not gimmicked like the ones we see in the AEW and WWE. So to actually break the table was actually something very kind of hard hitting for sure.
I have seen some spots with Japanese tables and there is no give. And then you see this, and from where he landed with that double stomp, and it was just for the wood just to cave in. I was like, oh, okay.
We are laying it in tonight, boys. Yeah.
mm.
All right, so after the stomps through the table, Ospreay comes back to suplex Kenny on the exposed metal frame of the same table. and then hits a Sky Twister press onto Kenny on the outside, which was just so graceful and phenomenal. Back in the ring, Ospreay hits a forearm to the back of Kenny's head off the top rope for just a 2 count. Kenny responds with a V trigger to the back, a poison Rana, and an Ushigoroshi for just a 2 as well. I don't know how Ospreay kicked out of that. Ospreay dodges a dragon suplex off the top, which I can't even imagine had Kenny hit that. Would have been just devastating.
It would have been just another 2 count, but still.
Yeah. I mean, for sure, because we got a lot of spots to get to, brother.
Oh, we got a
Uh,
lot.
but Ospreay dodges that dragon suplex off the top, flips out of it, hits a corkscrew kick to the head of Kenny, and an Oz cutter for once again another 2 count.
Just another 2 count.
And then Kenny takes a cheeky Nando's in the corner, and which this is where Kenny's eye begins to swell up. And later, when we see at New Year's Dash, the next day,
Oh,
we see he has a wonderful shiner, a black eye. Both men standing on the top rope, Kenny hits a DDT into the top exposed turnbuckle. And at this point, Ospreay is busted wide open. So I'm just giving you sort of the bigger highlights of this match, but this is pretty much basically the first sort of half of the match, roughly 20 plus minutes or so. And when I mentioned high intensity of this match, these guys definitely were showing you what you got in some hard hitting spots.
oh yeah, you weren't kidding. Like 100%, like high octane, absolutely heavy hitting. But I want to rewind a little bit if I can, just to
Of
the very
course.
very start of this with the entrances. Now, Wrestle Kingdom that you mentioned at the very start is the New Japan version of WrestleMania, and the entrances for this event have been absolutely amazing. And being a bit of a Final Fantasy nerd, I did geek out to whenever Kenny came out to just that absolute amazing visual of just Sephiroth's theme, the one winged angel just coming out, and then him in that get up, and then throwing out the big black wing, and then the big cheeky grin. And I have loved Kenny since I found out that his move is called the one winged angel. Like I've just been uh, amazed at that. And the fact that he came out in this getup was just so visually appealing to me. And then he comes down, followed by Will Ospreay, that's flanked by the entire Empire, and you're just like, oh no, Kenny's by himself, but Will has the United Empire, and these boys just came out looking so good. Everybody was just fresh, clean. He came out in his assassin gear, looked absolutely menacing with the goat on the knee pads as well, which I like the look of. And yeah, the reason I wanted to go back and mention that is because after that DDT, where Will then spilled to the outside, that's where the Empire came and had to rush to their guy. Like they had to rush to their guy to see, well, what's going on, because that was a really really good part about this. The Empire just they did not interfere, but they were completely distraught and clearly worried about their boss taking the big bump at this point in the match.
Yeah, 100%. That's good to note. Like you had mentioned, the sort of being the one of bigger shows and arguably the biggest show of the year for New Japan, staging the long rampway again. For those that aren't familiar, it happened in the Tokyo Dome. So this is an actual stadium where the Giants play, the Yomiuri Giants, Tokyo Giants play baseball. So again, large stadium, huge stage, long ramp, grand presentation, and these guys did a phenomenal job. The aforementioned Will Ospreay coming out with his contingent, the United Empire. The piece here is a lot of times what's a little bit different from North American or Western wrestling too, is you'll have the members of factions. It's very common, and this will happen in Stardom, the women's promotion, as well as New Japan, for members of your faction to second you, to the ringside. And it's more common to kind of see that. Sometimes we get to see it a little bit more often in maybe like a WWE or AW. But yes, we had pretty much the whole contingent of the United Empire out there. And that's a very excellent observation that although Kenny did come out with Don Callis, there was no interference from him. Likewise with the members of the United Empire, and we just let these guys just go at it, fast break, high octane offense. And to this point, yes, this is when we definitely saw when Ospreay takes a moment on spills to the outside and takes a powder. This is when you see the United Empire check on him, and this is again where we see Ospreay getting some color and getting busted wide open. So thank you for reiterating.
It was just more the fact that whenever they had the entrance, it was the first time we saw them, and then at this point was like legitimately during the match was the first part that I even twigged they were still there. I thought they had maybe gone away, gone to the back, and whatever because they'd done the entrance, and that's how that people would normally do. They would just kind of spill out the back. And Don making his fashionably late entrance, I think was it Kevin Kelly had said, or someone on the desk said his fashionably late entrance as he came in the side to help Kenny. But yeah, he just moved his way over to the desk, so the invisible hand was definitely felt, unfortunately. But the fact that these guys just did spill over and kind of look after Will, like honestly, I'm surprised that we hadn't heard them before. But this DDT to the exposed turnbuckle looked absolutely devastating. I did rewind it a few times to look at it and just be like, did I just see did they botch a move? Did they, no, he honestly DDT'd him to the turnbuckle, and it was as bad as it should have looked. And or it looked as bad as it should have been, rather, and it was just this is still so bloody good. It was well received, well delivered, well presented.
Absolutely. To get back into the match as well, and this is Ospreay still on the outside. And Kenny hits a graceful tope to Ospreay on the outside. And then bashes Will's head through the already broken table, which showing a very, very vicious side of Kenny in this matchup. Kenny continues to pour on the offense to a staggered Ospreay, including a stiff-looking pile driver, and then a couple of snapdragon suplexes. Kenny then hits a V-trigger to Ospreay, causing Will to go to the outside. Kenny, sitting on the top rope, reverses a Hurricane Rana attempt, dumping Ospreay's face onto the exposed turnbuckle. That was another spot that just looked so rough.
It was him in the jaw at that point, right?
Yeah, the two guys standing on the top rope, and obviously you don't want them to, fall off or, for goodness sakes, fall to the outside because they were just up high. It's a longer drop, but it looked, they were helping each other a little bit, but yeah, just they landed on a spot where Ospreay hits his face onto the turnbuckle, so that was rough. So we have that spot off the turnbuckle into an immediate V trigger to a slumped Will. And Kenny hits a top rope German suplex, which was absolutely crazy.
We do have to mention, though,
Yeah.
he went for the one winged angel and turned it into a top rope German, and that was seamless because there was no way Will was letting that happen. And you honestly have to see how seamless this was. It was bloody beautiful.
100%. So out of that, into that top rope German suplex, into another V trigger, yet again for only a 2 count as the matchup continues.
There was loads of V triggers and loads of 2 counts, just in case you're wondering.
100%. And then we see Ospreay fires up with some chops and some Kawada kicks, so really getting back into it. Hits a sit-out powerbomb for yet another 2 count. Ospreay hits a Chelsea grin, 2 hidden blades, and an Oz cutter from the top rope for yet again another 2 count. Will counters a Stormbreaker attempt into a one-winged angel attempt into a Styles clash. Then Will hits a vicious hidden blade after all that for yet again another 2 count. Finish of the match comes as both men stand off in the middle of the ring, exchanging strikes. Kenny hits a straight jacket, German suplex, followed up by a vicious knee strike, and a one-wing angel for the victory, and as new IWGP United States Heavyweight Champion in 34 minutes, 38.
was one hell of a match.
Kenny hit that one wing angel and it was over. It's over.
Yeah. There's no one unless you're called Kota Ibushi that you're not kicking out of that move. So I mean, there's a couple of spots in here that I really do enjoy about these two guys going for everything. The constant threat of the one winged angel, which you saw and you will see in NJPW matches, you see people threatening their big finishers early and in any position, because like in any position you should want to win, so you're going to try and break out your big move, and Will always counters or something happens. So like we said on the top rope, whenever the one winged angel attempt was cancelled, he threw him into a German, absolutely beautiful. You see the one winged angel attempt, and then it follows up into a Styles Clash from Will Ospreay poetically onto Kenny Omega, and then you just see the resurgence of Will Ospreay into the Hidden Blades. You see him do the Oz Cutter. You see him do his own offense in this match, only for it to be all foiled just by V trigger after V trigger after knee after Snapdragon suplex, is cross. It was just absolutely insane the amount of moves these guys were throwing at each other. And what I love about it is that whenever somebody did hit a big move, it felt and looked impactful. And the other guy, this late in the match, who'd also taken all that pain, all that damage, wasn't sitting, hulking up, brother. He wasn't trying to go for that big finish. He was honestly down for the count. And you saw Will in the corner trying to just struggle off with that elbow brace. He takes that off just to give the hidden blade to the face, because he wanted Kenny to see this coming this time at the very end, and it still wasn't enough. But a defiant Will Ospreay spitting in the face of Kenny Omega sealed his own fate with that last knee strike. He just spat in his face, took the knee strike, took the one winged angel, and then that was it. He was out for the count. It was a really, really cool way to end this match, and it's to show how determined each guy was and how brutal each guy was willing to be.
It's definitely one of those, especially in these big time matches for a title and basically what is a double main event, that you want to you want to harm your opponent and you definitely want to try to go for those big moves. And we seen a number of them. Osprey actually hitting a number of Oz cutters. We saw some hidden blades. Kenny hitting some knees, some stiff knees, and some other high impact offense. But yet the only time he ended up hitting his finisher, the one wing angel, actually sealed the deal. So it's very telling for sure that these guys just left it all out in the ring. And the matchup was here 34 minutes plus. You can tell these guys could have gone a lot longer for sure because they got some good cardio, but I felt like the sort of wave or the telling of the match was very, very good. Good back and forth. Each guy's got some heat, but man, it was just a fantastic match. I only sort of hit on the sort of highlights of it. We definitely suggest, if you have an opportunity and the wherewithal, to definitely watch this match. It's about a half hour, 34, about 35 minutes long. Old Uncle Dave Meltzario, the Wrestling Observer newsletter, gave this match 6.25 stars.
Honestly, if this is the only match from Wrestle Kingdom that you watch this match. Not for Dave Meltzer's rating, not for us talking about how good it is, just for the entrances alone, for how awesome they were, and for several of the spots in here that just show you what two individuals at these guys' level can do if allowed to go out and give a really good performance. Because as much as people want to, rag on Kenny and Will for, who they are as people, because they're cheeky people, they always like to give back and forth, and they're very, very straight with their words. These guys put on one heck of a show, and I can still see Will Ospreay's face as he's lying there in the middle turnbuckle that's exposed, about to take a V trigger to the back of the head, and just seeing his face before and after, and you just look at it and go like, this is amazing, this is brutal, and these guys are just amazing at this. So 100% if you only watch one match from Wrestle Kingdom 17, make sure it's this one.
100% agreed. So, really, really great matchup here. As we see Kenny Omega come victorious and come away yet again holding the IWGP United States Championship. Where do you think maybe is next for these guys? We'll start with Kenny being the US champ. Do you see him? Obviously, he's going to make appearances in AEW, more presumably with their working relationship showing the belt. So, do you maybe who do you think maybe is a next challenger, shall we say, for the new champion?
So I'm going to cheat a little bit because I think I already know who the next challenger is. And I think by that smile, you know who the next challenger is. And you know that I like this next challenger. That man is Jeff Cobb. What? Yes, please. I'm actually super stoked. I want to see Jeff Cobb versus Kenny Omega. Jeff Cobb needs the surfboard. Kenny Omega so bad. Um, and I think the best part about this is that it will be a bit of a grudge match with the fact that Jeff Cobb is part of the United Empire. And yeah, I love the fact that this is possibly the next match. So after having cheated there, I will, maybe go a bit down the line and say that I hope to see uh, Kenny back in Japan in the mid spring, in early summer, taking on whoever else needs to slash is available at the time. Maybe some Bullet Club members. You could probably see some Bullet Club members in there taking on Kenny. But I don't think Will is going to be challenging for that title again. At least not after his comments at the after show, really.
Yeah, 100% agreed. If I'm not mistaken, Kenny made the Jeff Cobb challenge after New Year's Dash, I believe. Was that correct, Joker?
I think
Okay,
so. It was
fair enough.
after that, yeah.
Sounds good. But that notwithstanding, besides the old Jeff Cobb, big beefy boy slapping meat, which I would love to see him in agreement with you. Just random thought because you mentioned his Bullet Club. I would love to see a Kenny Omega and Kenta match. Just two guys just taking seven shades out of one another and just going ham. So I would definitely like to see that match for the title.
I would really like to see that. And Chase Owens, I would like to see Chase Owens come back. I believe he's out injured at the minute, rehabbing and stuff. Chase Owens be super good. I remember watching a match with him and Jay White over in the G1 Climax, and Chase was amazing. Yeah, 100% Kenta would be great. I think that'll be fantastic. Um, Even possibly TJP as well from United Empire too. Like, I think that'd be a pretty solid match. But yeah, there's a few people that I can think of that would be really really good now. Now that my brain is sort of warming up to the thought of what their names are, because I can see their faces, but I can never remember names. But yeah, definitely those would be some top prospects.
Yeah, I think of all the folks that we had mentioned, we would definitely love to see any of those matches.
Mm.
And in terms of Will Ospreay losing the championship and yet another match to Omega, I think after the post-match press conference for Wrestle Kingdom, he mentioned something to the effect of he's given himself 1 year to make himself better and kind of be on top of the game type of piece. But where do you maybe see Will kind of going, or what's sort of next kind of in your mind for Will now?
You can't tell Will Ospreay to do anything. Like, Will Ospreay will just do whatever the heck Will Ospreay wants to do. Um, and he in the after match interviews, he did say that he's sacrificed enough and he doesn't want to sacrifice anymore. He's sick of sacrificing. There was a very heartfelt, emotional interview because nobody wanted to ask him questions. The visual of him drenched in sweat with caked on blood on his face, the strapped up hands and everything from throughout the match. It was a very striking visual of a broken man. And that's why it's really hard for me to even consider what's next, because how do you pull yourself together? And that is where he came up with he's going to give himself 1 year to get back on track. Um, Hopefully, that is inclusive of next year's Wrestle Kingdom. But I'm not 100% sure where this would take him. Um, to be a cheeky backseat booker, I want to go a year in the future and say that he will be in the main event of Wrestle Kingdom 18 with the IWGP Heavyweight Champion and wins that match, or is is out of the company at that point. It's definitely there's a lot to be said for Will Ospreay's work ethic over the pandemic era. I think that he has made it clear himself that he has worked uh, really hard during this era, and it's had a real drain on him. So if he wants to take some time off, I think fair enough to him.
Yeah, I see if you there's a photo floating around Twitter, if I'm not mistaken, of just Will with his head down post-match, and he's just scarred up and with the marks of the chops and all the strikes and stuff, and he's just looking rough, so I could see him just taking a little bit of time, having some matches, a little bit more into the spring, and then probably having a really strong matchup at Dominion around June, so I could definitely see something like that to kinda get the ball rolling on kind of his thing into the G1 and things of that nature. So hopefully into a big match at Wrestle Kingdom next year. So I could definitely see something of that nature and definitely wish the best for Will and Kenny for sure.
100%. And now that you mentioned that, I want to see Will win the G1
There we go. So I wouldn't be
because
mad at that.
he was so close this year against Okada, like so close against Okada that I need to see him win G1. Yeah, 100%.
I wouldn't be mad at that either. So those are our thoughts on the Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay match from Wrestle Kingdom 17. Definitely check it out for sure. We highly recommend it. But let us know down in the comment section below on YouTube or hit us up on Twitter or Instagram and let us know what your thoughts were on the US Championship match between Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay. All right, coming up to our next topic here, the match that actually ended the Wrestle Kingdom 17 matchup here, Kazuchika Okada taking on IWGP World Heavyweight Champion Jay White. This was another just ooh, quite the fun matchup in a different aspect where you had the previous matchup here with Kenny and Will, just like we said, high octane, fast break offense, just super heavy hitting. This was a little bit of a different kind of style. Hard hitting as well, but kind of like differently paced and just kind of a little bit more tactical and technical and things of such. So still equally enjoyable for sure.
Yeah, if you get the chance to watch two matches from Wrestle Kingdom 17, make sure this is the second match that you watch, because it'll give you a really big look into the different psychology between these four guys. Like the first two, the first match between the first two guys was very physical. It was very demanding on their athletic ability. And like you said, this there's a very tactical sort of play style from Jay White in all his matches. He's very psychological. He's very smart and is the top guy in NJPW for a reason. And he's the top guy in NJPW for a reason. At the start of this match, he is nothing if not the consummate unprofessional with his two sweets and his yeah his Okada claps and all this here. I both love and hate Jay White, and in this match you'll see why.
No, I'd agree 100%. So before we kick into the match proper, it's of note that Jay White holds a 4-1 record in singles matches over Kazuchika Okada. So Jay winning the series so far 4-1. But as Joker mentioned before the men touch, Jay White works the crowd by urging the crowd to chant for Okada. And I have a little bit of a note here that Jay, he has this connection with the crowd when he shows elements of kind of being a bit of a tweener or just being a heel. He has this connection with the Japanese audience that he can just definitely get a reaction out of them and kind of at times have them the crowd themselves in the palm of his hand. And I just had to sort of highlight that because this was just one instance of him just being a jerk now that these sort of uh, restrictions have been lifted and we can have a bit more cheering for the Japanese crowd. He took advantage of that and had them as a smarky heel have them cheer for Okada. It's okay, Okada, Okada. So I had to definitely highlight that.
Oh, 100%. But he did it at G1 as well when they refused to cheer. And that's why I loved this callback because, like the G1, he was clapping and he was, a really smarmy grin on his face, like, Okada, Okada. And like, they wouldn't do it. And he was like, he was giving off to the crowd. He was like, you should cheer, you just cheer for Okada and all this here. And then this time, as he was starting the claps, they clapped with him, forgetting maybe for a moment that they couldn't cheer for Okada because he's in the crowd's mind as well. It's like, he's got them clapping along and they reminds me, you can cheer now. He's stop clapping, cheer for Okada. And you never see, and this is probably where a lot of people get uh, dissociated from NJPW because you will never see a wrestler get the crowd behind the other wrestler intentionally. You don't see Roman out there going, Kevin Owens, and all this here. You don't see that. You don't see anybody in AEW cheering for the other guy. In fact, you would never see MJF trying to get somebody over at his expense either. So to see this guy out here poking fun at the crowd, and he's doing this so that he can kind of taunt them and be like, "I'm gonna beat your favorite," and that's why I love and hate Jay White.
Smart heel taps the temple, brother. So definitely really just wonderful, just heel work out there for sure. All right, the men start with some lockups and some strikes. So again, taking a little bit more of a tactical approach here. Jay takes control after a Saito suplex. And then on the outside, White drives Okada into the barricade and drops Okada onto the apron with a front-facing suplex, which once again, call back to the previous match. That's that thud when Okada landed face or belly first on the apron. Just, sounded rough.
Mm.
Then Jay drops Okada onto the ropes inside the ring with another front suplex, filled up, and then followed up rather with a double underhook suplex right into the turnbuckle, which again looked rough. Okada actually kind of landed sort of high on his shoulders and neck, but that was only for a 2 count. Okada takes control after he hits a DDT. After hitting an elbow and a flapjack, Okada drop kicks Jay to the outside. They make their way to the rampway, and Okada wonderfully hits a double DDT to both the Jay White and Gato on the rampway.
I love Gato. I think he's an absolutely amazing addition to Jay White's shtick because you just hear Gato's voice in the background, Jay, no! And then he just runs up and he's like, don't, he tries to get involved and all this here. Gato's fantastic.
Yeah. For those that aren't aware, Gato was sort of a mentor to Kazuchika Okada, but then turned his back and aligned with Jay White. So, little context and history for you there. All right, back in the ring with a wonderful missile drop kick and a money clip. But Jay escapes and hits a deadlift German suplex, again, hitting and showing the strength of Jay White there. Blade Buster from Jay for 2 count, and then a Fisherman Brainbuster for yet another 2 count. Jay goes for some hard chops, but Okada no sells, as he tends to do sometimes, and then hits a dropkick of his own onto Jay. And after numerous counter, Okada locks in the money clip again, hits a spinning tombstone and a stiff-looking lariat. And into the money clip again, locks it in for a moment. Jay looks definitely in some serious trouble, but scrambles and makes his way to the rope and breaks it up, the submission. So, again, we have sort of the kind of first half of this matchup here. A little bit different style, a little bit different paced. Still hitting some high impact offense, but a little bit different look from these guys. Folks might be a little bit more in tune to the sort of allegorical, a little bit of Randy Orton elements, a little bit of Triple H, where we're doing, it's not, high spot, just for an example, but I'm gonna hit you hard, be very, very calculated with what each men are trying to hit on their opponent.
Definitely the comparisons I would make to people who you would recognize Randy Orton, Triple H, the guys who they take a spot, they have a heavy hand, they hit that heavy move, and they take a second to appreciate what they've done, as opposed to chain wrestling, where you're going from one move into the next, you're going from the next move, you're always trying to find that. It's completely different from what you saw in the previous match, where the guys only took a break when they were both down. Whereas in this one, Jay White, whenever he is in the lead and he's got those big chops. He's throwing up the two sweets. He's getting the crowd behind Okada to try and get them to cheer, to try and get them to clap along. He is the one taking the breather while his opponent's down. Obviously, giving his opponent some time to recuperate as well. But you have this guy who is taking his time, being methodical, and making sure whenever he does a move, it counts. So whenever you see Okada no sell the chops, which is it's a frequent thing that NJPW wrestlers do in general. Like I think Will did it in the previous match, maybe even Kenny did it too, and there was instances throughout this show where someone would get hit with a stiff chop. Not everyone is Minoru Suzuki, okay? But everyone likes to think they are. So they will take one stiff chop and they will just look at you like you did nothing, and then they'll give you another one, and then they'll cave. But I do like to see that sort of, I got hit. I'm not going to, crumple and fall. I'm going to stand up and my fight or flight is now activated. I'm going to fight you. And then only to get smacked back down again. I like to see it. It's interesting. And for me, it's something different because I'm just used to guys getting hit and them going down and acting like it's the end of the world.
Agreed. I think the piece that or the notion that you mentioned, a methodical. Definitely you had the piece of I'm gonna hit the move and sort of let it breathe. And you're right, Jay White just he played to the crowd and much like sort of a Western style where you kind of do the acknowledgement piece, juxtaposed to the previous match where it was just move, move. You didn't have too much play, really, if at all, with the crowd itself. So again, definitely a tactical, a different pace for sure. And the aforementioned spot of Okada no selling a just stiff sounding chop, it definitely wasn't overplayed. I watched the Wrestle Kingdom itself. I really didn't kind of see that, or it was played to Jay was hitting offense, boom, you hit that chop, but I'm making my comeback. So it fit well in the context of the match. So I agree. There's times when it's sort of an accurate or a good way to kind of play into the story of the match.
100%. 100%. It's not like it's a Hogan hulking up kind of thing where, everybody just starts to hulk out and,
Shake their
get
hands.
all, shake and, and just look like they're being really weird. But still, like you said, it really plays well into the comeback sequence of events. And yeah, 100%. Even though I said it's something everybody does, it's not like everybody does it every 5 minutes. It is something that everybody employs, but is something that is a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, everyone has their little different kind of play on I'm gonna make my comeback. So all right, so after Jay spills to the outside after being locked in the money clip, we have Okada nails Gato and then hits a flipping senton onto White and Gato on the outside, which again very graceful for a rather larger guy. If I'm not mistaken, Okada's what 6'4" ish
He's
as
huge.
well. Yeah, he's tall. If you looked at when they Jay and Okada sort of did the standoff kind of at points in the match, you know, obviously Okada's taller, but it's one of those things that you don't necessarily would see it outwardly unless he's kind of next to folks. So for sure.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
All right, so after that flipping senton, we get a diving elbow off the top rope once again inside the ring. And Okada goes for a rainmaker, but Jay drops to the mat. And this was actually a wonderful counter because these men have had 5 one-on-one matches in addition to having numerous tag and 8-man tag matches in different iterations. But they face each other a lot. And the simple fact that kind of going for that rainmaker, but the simple counters just drop to his knees. And Jay, if I'm not mistaken, tapped his temple and acknowledged it. But yeah, really, really smart
He
move.
had this big grin on his face, like, what you gonna do now? I'm down here. It was, yeah, 100%. It was beautiful.
It's a smart move. After that, the men exchange strikes, but Jay drops to the mat exhausted. So you can tell definitely they're getting to that point where the initial adrenaline is there and they're kind of have to kind of pull it together. So Gato distracts the referee, Red Shoes, and Jay tries to go for a low blow, but is struck and cut off by Okada before he can do so. So that was a really, really good matchup piece, little story beat in the match, and you can tell by the fact that during the distraction by Gato of Red Shoes, Okada sort of knew it was coming, but he cut him off before Jay could actually do it. So wonderful piece there.
Yeah, anytime you see like the interaction of the guy coming in and going, "I'm going to distract the referee," you know the low blow is coming, and the over exaggerated arm of Jay White just to try and come up, kicked away, and dealt with by Okada. It was like another thing like I have really enjoyed about these matches in NJPW is they take these tropes that we see all the time in Western wrestling and they acknowledge them and then they just laugh in their face at them because, the whole nobody acknowledges the fact that I'm so tired, so I've fallen to my, knees to counter a move. It's like, no, Jay White falls to the ground and looks at his opponent and goes, I've got you now. And then, counters gets countered on the low blow, things like this here. They're brilliant little things that I honestly wish we saw more of.
Agreed. So after the low blow attempt, Jay ends up countering Hitsu Uranagi to create some space. After a back suplex over the top rope to Okada, Jay hits a sleeper suplex and then a regal plex for a 2 count. A bloody Sunday by White, but Okada counters into a German suplex, holds on to his wrist. He hits 2 short arm clotheslines, scores a drop kick, and a landslide, but Jay counters with a Blade Runner for an extremely close 2 count. As we wind down here, Jay hits 2 stiff short arm clotheslines of his own. And Jay goes for a Blade Runner, but Okada strikes with a Rainmaker for Okada's very, very close 2 count. Finish of the match, we see both men exchanging some strikes. After a series of counters, Okada hits a Blade Runner on Jay, a Cobra Flosion, and a Rainmaker to win the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship in 33 minutes, 3 seconds.
Like I said, if you get to watch 2 matches from Wrestle Kingdom 17, make sure this is the second one. There was just a lot going on here, and not all of it was action. There was a lot of psychology and stuff involved by Jay White, taking his time and all this here. One of my favorite spots actually was a 2 spot was whenever Okada hit the Rainmaker and went for the Rainmaker pose, and you got that zoom out from the camera and you get to see the crowd and stuff, which I love. It's akin to whenever the best friends give the hug to Orange Cassidy and Excalibur's like, you got to give the people what they want. I keep hearing that in my head whenever Okada gets his Rainmaker pose off. Was whenever Jay White delivered the Rainmaker to Okada and then kind of lazily, sloppily did the same thing, and the cameraman kind of staggered and then did the zoom out for Jay White. It was like, yes. So there was a lot of really cool spots in there.
During that point, I think Rocky Romero was on commentary for this match, and he kind of gives out to the cameraman. It's like, "Are you working for him or something?" Like, yeah, that was a beautiful touch. Yeah.
Yeah, I really liked that. I thought that was especially funny when it was like, I think the cameraman's on the take from Jay White or something. Cause seriously, like, yeah, okay.
Yeah. But for sure, like I said, I'm only kind of mentioning in terms of a little bit of a play-by-play for some of the highlights of this match. I'd agree with Joker once again. Definitely, if you have the opportunity and you have the wherewithal, watch this matchup. It's about 33 minutes, but there were so many elements and some story beats and kind of flow to the match that I just happened not to mention. But this was just, again, definitely another fantastic matchup here. I've made note here that Uncle Dave of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, Dave Meltzer, gave this 4.5 stars, which was, again, just another strong matchup for sure. So
Really, Dave?
4.5,
Really?
baby. 4.5.
4.5? I knew about the 6.25 stars from Will and Kenny, but you're not doing yourself any favors here by not giving this 5 stars. At the least. This was such a good match and deserves that extra half a star. But let's face it, I don't put much stock by Dave's star ratings. I find it a comedic little piece that people do. But definitely a fun match. Don't worry, I'll add the half star on. So there you go. It's 5 stars now with the Joker half star extra.
Taking nothing away from Dave, he's been a journalist and a historian for 30, 40 some odd years in the wrestling business and the combat sports industry. He gives his impressions and his opinions on matchup. Folks get worked up over his rating for good or for bad. That notwithstanding, it's just a strong match that we'd agree that you definitely want to check out for yourself because it was just a fun watch.
Oh, definitely.
So with that, with Okada winning the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship, Joker, what do you feel like maybe could be next for Okada? Perhaps a next contender?
So I saw during the match that Jay was a wee bit distracted during the early game. Didn't happen so much from the mid to late, but in the early goings of this match, he was a wee bit distracted, pointing out Mr. Tanahashi, who was on guest commentary at the desk for the Japanese announce team. So possibly could see Jay White versus Tanahashi. Not 100% sure where things go for Jay because he always feels like he should be in and around the top title scene. So that's where my initial kind of thing goes, where maybe he wants to try and direct his rage and anger at anybody else.
All right, so that's good for Jay. What about Mr. Okada with the actual champion himself? What do you feel?
Um, I'm immediately blanking on the name because it's really really annoying. But he was actually challenged right after the match. And this is going to sound really bad that I can't remember their name. What's their name, PT? You remember who it was that challenged him directly after the match? Am I going to look like an idiot now?
No, no, ooh, goodness
You know their
gracious.
face.
I do know their face. Why am I blanking on this?
He got challenged after the match happened.
Shingo
You know, we
Takagi.
can
Shingo
Shingo
Takagi.
Takagi. There you
There it
go.
is. There it is.
Takagi, who actually went on a New Year's Dash, won the King of Pro Wrestling, got the belt, and well, I say threatening. He's challenging for the IWGP Heavyweight title from Okada. So we know who their next opponent is. We do lots of cheating here just because we watch the show. So even though I can't remember the names, I'm terrible with names. Okay, sue me. So we know who the next opponent is, but we also know that Shingo Takagi actually has a little bit of interest from the Great Okan as well, who is the Rev Pro champion as well, which is kind of funny because that was a belt that Ospreay used to hold as well as the IWGP US Heavyweight title, which he doesn't hold anymore. So yeah, it's we know Okada's next stop, but not 100% sure how long Okada's going to hold on to this belt because who else is actually going to be a challenger for Okada this year?
I feel like with 2023, we're opening it up a little bit more. Obviously, we've seen Okada face off against Tanahashi, Tetsuya Naito, sort of obviously the big hitters for sure. So I feel like Takagi kind of going up and like, hey, Okada, I want to challenge you and kind of step up. I feel like it'd be a kind of just a different or a little bit more of a fresher matchup. So in terms of Okada, I'm totally down to like see that matchup for sure.
Hmm.
I could see someone from the United Kingdom trying to kind of step up and try to face Okada. It might be a little bit different. I don't want to say maybe Ospreay right away, perhaps, but you know, I don't know if Great Okan is there yet or Jeff Cobb or things like that. So, Aaron Hanare might need some more seasoning, things in that. But I wouldn't seen somebody from the United Empire kind of going in there and at least maybe being after Takagi, perhaps.
Well, if he was still in the company, TMDK's Jonah would have been a good one, considering he's already beaten Okada, a fact that he will not let you live down, and a fact that he should always never let you forget, the fact that he did actually beat Okada. So, maybe we could get a WWE NJPW Forbidden Door and have Big Doug go back and beat Okada once again, become the IWGP Heavyweight Champion, then come back and beat Roman for the Universal Blue Belt. I'm just booking it, Triple H. You should just take my advice here, buddy, okay?
Strange things have happened to the start of 2023, so nothing explicitly is out of the realm of possibility, but I don't know. I could kind of see a little bit of that maybe after Takagi. And it comes to Jay White. Jay had a little bit of a moment with Okada after he put the belt around his waist and they had to exchange some words for so I could see maybe not leaning more tweener, showing a little bit of babyface stuff, but still kind of being the guy. But not I'm not saying he's not gonna be a heel, but he kind of was like, he gave a little bit of a respect, like we had a hard match and you won type of thing. So Jay, I mean, I don't know. We could I definitely to the point of him kind of chirping at Tanahashi. I would love to see Jay White and Tanahashi. That'd be super fun to watch for sure. So all right. But those were our thoughts and ideas and notions about the Kazuchika Okada Jay White match at Wrestle Kingdom 17. Like we said, we definitely suggest you check it out if you have the opportunity to. Wonderful match and just all around solid as well. So if you have some thoughts, let us know down in the comment section below on YouTube or hit us up on Twitter, Instagram, and let us know what your thoughts up on this matchup for Kazuchika Okada and Jay White at Wrestle Kingdom 17. All right, coming up to the other big story coming out of Wrestle Kingdom 17. Mercedes Monè making her debut for New Japan Pro Wrestling. So, get into it here after Kairi has a victory over Tam Nakano for the IWGP Women's Championship. Goes dark, and we see the entrance video, and Mercedes Monè makes her debut for New Japan. Makes her way into the ring. Both women stand off. Kairi holds up her IWGP Women's Championship. Mercedes extends a hand for Kairi to shake. Mercedes pulls Kairi in and hits what I believe was supposed to be a Gory Bomb DDT. And then Mercedes demands the microphone. She congratulates Kairi on making history. Mercedes also knows a thing or two about making history. She's here in New Japan and Stardom to make more. She introduces herself as the Standard, the Conversation, the Blueprint, and the CEO of the women's division. In a battle in the Valley in San Jose, she'll leave Kairi bankrupt, and you can bank on that from Monè. Mercedes holds up the Women's Championship before dropping it back on Kairi, and they both make their exit out of the arena.
Money.
So this was quite the interesting blow up on social media. Even at, for me, it was about 3:34 a.m. for me out here in the States where I'm located. But even too, this was blowing up on Twitter, brother. Certainly an impact.
Yeah, it was a little bit later in the day than that for me. I believe I got up and I managed to catch it live as it was happening, but then I had to go out pretty much straight after it, so I had time to sort of mull over and didn't really read any of the comments because I wanted to leave Twitter alone because I hadn't watched the rest of Wrestle Kingdom at this point, so I left it well enough alone, and I came back and I rewatched the segment. Mercedes Varnado looked really good coming down to the ring. Okay, her ring attire, her attire coming down to the ring looked really good in obviously the Japanese flag colors, with this beautiful crown and stuff. She moved really well. She looked fantastic, absolutely amazing presence coming to the ring. Gets into the ring. Has I believe one of the young boys actually held up in the ring ropes for her. I can't remember if it was or not. And then she gets in, and that's whenever I first twig that in the background, all I keep hearing is Money, Money every couple of seconds. And then I twig to her music, and I'm like, what is this god awful noise? Why is she saying money like that. What is why are my senses being assaulted right now by this cacophony of, about to swear, but cacophony of terribleness, let's just call it. Um she gets into the ring, standoff with Kairi, like you said. Um and then you showed me a video of what the move was meant to look like, so I believe we can place the pseudo botch of the move on Kairi for not knowing how this move was meant to be taken. But why does this move exist? It looks awful. It has no visual appeal. It is awkward. And if anyone out there in the indies, because PT told me there are people in the indies that use this move, would like to stop using this move, please do so now. Because you just saw how terrible it looks on the big screen. Please do not use this move. It's a DDT with extra steps. What are you doing? Like, at least come up with something a little bit flashier. Maybe even, I don't know, a running DDT. I don't know. Do something stupid. Don't do a gory, awkward DDT. It looked terrible. And then the promo happened. And I kind of wish it had stopped the gory awfulness. But it didn't. She had to tell us who she was, as if we didn't already know who she was. Now, granted, maybe the Japanese crowd didn't know who she was, but I'm pretty sure they didn't know who she was after the promo either. The promo was a little bit awkward. She was just trying to sell herself as being this big deal and used all the different words for boss that she could. And honestly, I feel like Blueprint and Conversation are used by other people in other promotions, and you know, kind of a wee bit awkward that you have to use CEO because it sounds terrible compared to boss. It's CEO time, cries Michael Cole in SmackDown. It really doesn't have the same ring to it. And then she just kind of walks away. And fair enough. If it had ended there, it would have been sufficiently awkward. But I'm kind of going to go on a little bit and let you know there was a press conference afterwards. At which point, she asked, "Are there any questions?" And there were crickets. At which point, she told us all about herself again. And when asked, "What Joshi wrestlers are you most looking forward to wrestling?" she listed a couple of people, and one of them was retired.
I have it here for context. Mercedes mentions Aja Kong, Nami Toyota, which of course is retired, AZM, Azumi, and Miho.
She mentioned these people, and she took a pause as if to think of the next one, and she actually mentioned AZM and then went, right, right, as if, praise me for knowing who that person is. Not gonna lie, I don't know many Joshi wrestlers, but still, it seems like neither does Mercedes Fernando because it was really awkward at this point in time. It really sounds like I'm hating on her new character, and I kind of am in a sense. I don't know how you thought PT, but like you can let me know what you took of it in a wee second. It was just I have so much about this that I disliked because I was maybe my expectations were a bit high, and they really fell short by the presentation of the music. Like her personal presentation, immaculate, amazing. She's never had a problem carrying herself to the ring and inside the ring. Uh, this one move really let her down. Like it was so awful and awkward, and please get the heck rid of it. And then the promos, I've never been a big Sasha Banks promo guy myself. Um, and this kind of shoved the awkwardness down my throat a little bit more. As well as, and here is the big crux of the point, what's with the name? It's Moan. It is honestly just Moan. Not within, I'm not trying to say Moan Moan, it's just Moan. It's like there's no T to add to Monet. It is not how you pronounce Monet, which she wants us to call her. And it just, why not just go with Mercedes Varnado? It's such a cooler name. Anyway, rant over. PT, Let me know what you thought because I'm sure people are probably going to burn me at the stake for hating on Mercedes Varnado for that much.
I'm hearing the pitchforks and the torches coming now for
Come at me.
coming for Joker. No.
Come at me. Let me know what you think because you know what? I don't give a crap. That is literally what I thought about a terrible situation. It could have been better. It wasn't.
No, I see Kevin Kelly mentions on commentary that this is sort of the worst kept secret. And actually, in fact, New Japan actually announced ahead of time that Mercedes was going to be making an appearance at Wrestle Kingdom 17. So once that was sort of defined or sort of announced, I mean, we as fans, it has a huge expectations for Mercedes, which I think for anyone, no matter who it is, to be honest, it can be tough to live up to. I don't think we knew exactly what we were expecting. I know we feel like we were going to make an appearance, but like in what context or what have you, sort of, we didn't have any idea. So already we're already thinking of dream notions and ideas, and regardless of whatever it was going to be, it's going to be tough to live up to. So I thought the Mercedes' entrance presentation was great. The robe, the crown, she looked great. Like you mentioned too, she always has a wonderful way to kind of exude sort of a star power element to her. The robe was fantastic, that kimono looking piece, the crown. She was presented very, very well. If I'm not mistaken, I believe the katakana on the back of her kimono robe actually read Banks. I believe. Feel free to let me know if I heard that correctly, or let me know what if you found what that means. So nice little cheeky element there. When it comes to the entrance theme, I honestly I felt it was a bit distracting. Like it had this vibe of like late 80s, early 90s kind of thing. Almost sounded like a little crisscross song there. Shades of a little bit of the AEW's best friends kind of mixed in, but I think when she actually made it to the ring, it actually kind of switched gears and had this kind of like whole different vibe too. So like it was a different, almost like two songs kind of mashed together, which I thought was kind of interesting. So almost like, maybe it's like part one of the song, part two. So I don't know. I was kind of digging the sort of the second portion of the song's vibe a little bit more per se than myself. So and then Mercedes and Kairi just didn't hit the gory bomb DDT clean. So I don't know if that's her new finisher per se, but for something a little bit more convoluted, might have to take a couple practices, a couple goes at it just to make sure it looks clean. It's not the kind of easiest thing to kind of roll off the back and then stand and then meet and then hit the DDT if that's in fact so. It's who knows, but I think it's fair to say it looked a little rough, but yeah, take a little bit more practice to kind of go through it. And then when it comes to the promo, to be fair, it's just pretty straightforward. She's here. She has a match in February. She's going to take the title. So wasn't kind of anything sort of over the top. It's one of those things that you be straightforward with it in terms of the time that you got and kind of make sure you look big time as anyone should and everyone should. So I thought the segment was fine, all things considered. It's hard to live up to any and all those potential things that we could have been for her debut. I'm not sure anyone was expecting to kind of come out of this, but we know she was going to make an appearance, and that notwithstanding, regardless of whether you were neutral about it, whether you liked it, and whether you disliked it, she made a huge impact in social media and the internet wrestling community. So if that was the outcome, if that's our takeaway, then we hit a home run with that for sure.
100%. Like if that was the optic she was looking for, then fantastic. Um, Obvious criticisms are obvious. People are not always going to be on your side. Um, one of our first videos was asking for better for Sasha Banks and Naomi Trinifatu, who was actually in Japan with her along with Bailey as well. So I mean, I am happy to see Mercedes doing well and doing so much for herself and chasing after what's going to make her happy and make her the most amount of bloody money that she can get. But do not incorporate that into your name and then spell it wrong. Just try and I don't know, use your real name because it sounds cooler than Moan. or Monè. It just sounds awful.
I agree with you, like, in the aspect of, like, I like the name Mercedes Vernado. I think it's cool sounding, it's different, it's just Mercedes Vernado, if you would hear, like, an announcer say it, it sounds cool. You know, I
Mm,
I don't know anything kind of what's going on with Mercedes herself, in terms of potential trademarks or things of such, but, she chose to go with a different stage name per se, but, everybody's gonna look and feel at it different, but I think her legit name sounds awesome.
yeah, and it's just one of those things that I can scream to the heavens. It's just not going to make it so. But hopefully, people will criticize that terrible move, and she will, I don't know, use a DDT as her finisher just without the extra steps. I just don't think it's needed. I think it has such high chance for failure, and when you look at some of the moves that some of the wrestlers do use for finishers, they're not so slow. Like they don't. If they're slow, they're powerful moves. But this is a DDT at the end. Like, let's face it, the Rainmaker is just a ripcord lariat. Like that's all that is. Um, the hidden blade's just an elbow to the back of the head. Like, these are high impact moves or slow moves with big force. Like this is just a rest hold with the gory part, not even the gory bomb. It's just the rest hold. Let them down, then DDT them. Like it's. I'm sure somebody's gonna probably explain why it's a really really good move at some point, but for now it doesn't match the fashion style that her character is going for, and I think it doesn't mesh well, and I think it just looked terrible on her debut.
I think when it comes to a finishing move, that's the last thing that you're gonna hit on your opponent before you get that 3 count, as opposed to a submission, for example, but that's the thing, that's the last thing they see before you kind of raise your hand in victory. You would ideally want a move that you can hit on everyone and kind of you have a high success rate and it looks smooth, for example. So this particular one, not to say it's just it can be a little bit more of a convoluted one. So more practice when folks can do it. I hopefully she'll be a lot smoother and they can kind of do that. But I guess my concern would be if you have kind of bigger opponents, maybe I know Sasha can be strong, but maybe I don't know if it's something she can hit on everyone and can be smooth every time, but I'm hoping for the best. And like you said, hoping for the best. If you call back to our very first episode, we talked about Sasha or Mercedes herself and Trinity, Naomi in WWE, walking out on WWE. And we've talked about in that episode, as well as a follow up one on the AEW women's division. We want what's best for these guys and gals, and we want better. And I think WWE as well as AEW, we've talked in the past last year, have opportunities with how they book the women and how they do storylines and stuff like that. So now to see one of the sort of bigger names in sort of women's wrestling kind of take it onto herself and kind of try to lead her own journey or try to do what's best for her. Hey, that's sort of in our mantra that we want the best for these guys and gals. And, notwithstanding, whether you enjoyed the segment, whether you didn't, whether you were neutral about it, like I said, our takeaway is she made a huge impact and hopefully she continues to be successful going forward.
100%.
All right, so those were our thoughts and notions on Mercedes Monè, Ms. Mercedes Vernado's debut in New Japan Pro Wrestling at Wrestle Kingdom 17. Let us know your thoughts down in the comment section below on YouTube or hit us up on Twitter, Instagram, and let us know what your thoughts are on Mercedes Monet's debut. All right, coming up 2 quick hits for some of the newer listeners slash watchers. Quick hits are little segments that we enjoyed throughout the week that we may not have gotten an opportunity to discuss in a full-fledged topic, but we wanted to share and we wanted to tell you about a sort of pop the boys segment that we happen to have. My man Joker, I have grumblings and I hear that you, sir, have a quick hit for this week.
I do. I do. And anybody that watched WWE SmackDown will know exactly what this is. It is another section in the ongoing saga of Sami Zayn is the best part of this show, aka the Bloodline storyline. Yeah, it. I don't really need to say any much more than that, but we will talk about it here. We start off with the SmackDown show. We have our boys, the Bloodline, coming out to wreck the show yet again, like they did on Raw. However, this time, the big dog, the needle mover, the man himself, Roman Reigns, comes out to share in some of the action and cut a promo for us. Now he gets the city to acknowledge him as per usual, and then says that he wants to hear what the honorary Us has to say. So he kind of lets Sammy talk for a little bit. What Sammy says is not really the crux of what I want to kind of point out, though. It's what happens after when Roman Reigns accuses Sami Zayn of trying to be the head of the table by calling his shot. He called the win. The loss is not what's important to him because he didn't lose. Roman Reigns was not pinned. He wasn't even in the ring. It was Sami that got pinned, and Sami got pinned by Kevin Owens. So Roman's annoyed that he called his shot and said that you're trying to be the tribal chief. Do you want to be? Why are you trying to be me? And getting in Sammy's, and Sammy was backing up, and you saw Jimmy and Jay and Solo standing there like, I really don't care. I've just been sent here by the elders. Just pay me my money, and I'll be on my way. And Jimmy and Jay are just like off to the side going, ooh, as typical Uso fashion. So Sammy backs up, and then all of a sudden, Kevin Owens comes out to the ring. Sorry. So Kevin comes out to the ring and starts giving heat to Mr. Roman Reigns. Just yet again, this is Kevin Owens being Kevin Owens, stirring misdeeds and all this here. And I loved it, and I saw it, and just thought that this was more fuel to the fire that was this relationship. But the seeds have been sown, as they say. So later on down the line, we see Sami Zayn in the back, trying to get into the locker room of Roman Reigns, the Bloodline, where he normally likes to go and hang out. And Mr. Wiseman comes out and oh nope, not letting you in. It's not this. It's not the same thing as half. It's like no, he's too angry. He's not seeing you. At which point, Jimmy and Jay turn up, and they just both. Even Jimmy didn't give him like they both looked at Sammy and were like, kind of give a handshake to Mr. Paul, the wise man, and walked right on in. Sammy's heartbroken at this point. Like Sammy does not know what to do. Oh dear, oh dear. So later on down the line, again we run and we see into this locker room. Mr. Roman Reigns himself eventually says to Paul Heyman, "Get me Sammy." Wants to talk to the honorary use apparently. So Sammy eventually comes to the room. He's like, "Oh, sheepish! Like, you wanted to see me? He's a bit sheepish. We love sheepish Sammy here because it's always funny to see how detracted he can be and just how scared because he's great at it." And Roman surprises everyone because he listens to Sammy's apology. He listens to Sammy and he says, "I'm not accepting your apology." And at that point, I was like, yes, he's going to punch him in the face and he's going to just throw him out the door and everything's going to be trashed. And Roman surprised me by going, because no one should have to be out there and be talked to the way you were talked to. The things that were said to you were wrong. I am sorry. And my mind was blown. Roman Reigns, the needle mover, is what kind of mind game chicanery are you pulling? What is going on? And Sammy's just kind of like, even Paul, whenever Roman said, "I'm not accepting your apology," kind of looked at Sammy, went, "Run, run now!" Like, look, the eyes bugged out, and everybody just kind of breathed a sigh of relief. Eventually, the Usos, who have left for their match already, their music comes out, and Sammy tries to leave, and he's like, "No, no, no, no." Roman just stops and goes, "Sit down. We'll watch it from here. It's fine." I am absolutely mesmerized by what's going on with what happened and transpired in this little 2 minute segment. I was expecting something that I didn't get, but what I did get was just hilarious. And then we get some more. Because during the Usos match with the unfortunately named Banger Bros, yes, that's their name, Sheamus and Drew McIntyre. Please change that immediately. We don't like that. We really, really don't like that.
We can't copyright that.
We see little cuts back to the dressing room. Sammy somehow has popcorn. And it looks like they're talking, Sammy's, cheering on, he's eating some popcorn, and he offers some to Roman. And Roman kind of looks at it, and Sammy's not paying attention, he's just looking at the screen. He offers some to Roman. Roman looks at it, looks at the wise man, looks at the popcorn, back to the wise man, like, "I'm not eating that." Then Sammy just takes back popcorn, not plus or anything, just kind of starts eating the popcorn again. And then the very next one, we see they all have popcorn. The wise man sat there on the chair just numbing away, and Mr. Roman Reigns is leaning forward watching the match as he's going on. And Sammy and all is just the little 5 to 10 second segments that we get in between these matches is hilarious. Like, it, without words, they have managed to just tell us a story of Sammy, who was sheepish at the beginning, kind of thaws out a little bit and becomes back to his normal self, and then manages to bring the tribal chief back around yet again. And then, as if to just top off the entire show, we see Sami Zayn celebrating after the Usos retain their tag team titles by chucking popcorn around the room, and Roman Reigns laughing, and just everything is right with Sami Zayn's world.
The roller coaster of emotions that we were on during this episode of SmackDown was ridiculous.
Oh yeah, it took him 2 hours to tell that story, and I loved every second of it.
It's a callback to sort of Attitude Era-ish things when we'd have this kind of storyline thread throughout the entire episode of a Raw or SmackDown, for example. So it's a nice little kind of touch there, and it reminded me kind of at the beginning and sort of how it began and ended, like the sitcoms like from the 90s where, you'd start and then there'd be like the conflict or whatever, but by the end of the episode, we're right back to where we were and kind of everything is cool. So it was kind of like, oh, we had that sort of episode of the week kind of conflict, and but things are good.
Now that you mention that, though, whenever you mention sitcom, I can just imagine them freeze framing it as Sammy's just throwing popcorn, and then the theme music hits. Executive producer Paul Levesque.
There you go. So
That would have been hilarious.
I smell an edit somewhere. Please do that for me if you could. So there. But I'm in agreement, like, this whole journey, throughout the episode, but I'm in agreement, man. What killed it for me is those small cutaways during the Uso match. It's like, we see him back there, and then Sammy has the popcorn, and then, Roman has the popcorn. I'm like, "Oh my god." Like, it's just you saw them do so much with no dialogue or whatever, or barely anything, and then those cutaways that they just gave you everything you needed to know, and I was like, "Oh, they patched up their relationship." So kudos to them. Yeah, it was amazing.
I think what was really funny for me was Wade Barrett on commentary mentioning the tribal chief doesn't eat popcorn. And then after the next, I was, "Hey Cole, can we get popcorn on the desk?" I was like,
Well, there we go.
"Oh yeah." The little thing. I love the heel commentator. I think it's a silly dynamic that some people do well, and Wade Barrett is one of those guys that does it well. But that little addition at the end of them all having popcorn, it sent me. It was really, really good.
Yeah, they kinda, like, found common ground, but it was with popcorn, so that was good, so.
Exactly.
Yeah, just a really another just kind of fun kind of segmented journey and just little story beats with the bloodline. For those that have been following us, and a good amount of our shorts have just highlighted the kind of the storytelling aspect of these little moments. Again, these guys just knock it out of the park with their little facial expressions, a little bit of interactions with one another. These, and this was just another kind of just fun element in the ever going incredible story that is Sami Zayn within the bloodline. So kudos for sure. Thank you for sharing.
Absolutely no problem. I just hope that there is more to this, and I can't wait to see it.
All right, so those were our quick hit for the week. If you have a quick hit from this week, let us know down in the comment section below, or hit us up on Twitter or Instagram and let us know if you had a moment that you enjoyed or your quick hit from this week in the world of professional wrestling. All right, so that about wraps it up for us, Joker. This was another fun one for here to start the new year off. How was it for you, bud?
I got to talk about some stuff that made me laugh, some stuff that I really enjoyed, and some stuff that pissed me off. I thought it was a mixed bag. It was all good. I loved it. What about yourself?
We certainly ran the gamut today, for sure. It's not oftentimes that we get to kind of talk about New Japan for sure. Obviously, we've touched on some of the kind of bigger pieces throughout the previous year, be that with the G1 and kind of a little bit of pieces here, but obviously with Wrestle Kingdom in the first week of January, obviously being the big show, the WrestleMania, if you will, for the kind of large scale production that New Japan has. We both enjoyed it. It was certainly a little bit more of a reasonable hour for you. It was absolutely the middle of the night for me, but I still stayed up to kind of watch a good number of it live. But yeah, man, just great matches from these shows. And like we aforementioned, we tried to give you a little bit of a taste, but if you can, feel free to watch these shows. And it's nice to kind of spread our wings. A number of the shows have been elements from WWE and AEW. So to kind of cover something a little bit different and try to get perspective and kind of a little bit of a worldwide view was kind of fun. And I was digging it, and it was definitely the highlight for this week for me.
100%. Like, I mean, we've had quick hits, or rather, I've had quick hits from G1 Climax and stuff from before. I have paid attention to what's been going on with some of NJPW. So, like you said, it's really good to talk about something that isn't Chris Jericho, MJF, Roman Reigns, John Cena, Kevin Owens. The same guys. Um, and it's really good to see those things. And many apologies to Shingo Takagi for not remembering his name, but still, I'll not soon forget it now.
It's all good. It's one of those things, again, like you said, it's a big world in professional wrestling. We're both kind of spending a good amount of time watching a little bit more of the stuff that we can see a little bit more readily, ergo WWE and AEW. But like we mentioned, we talked about some stuff here for New Japan, and wrestling in Japan is huge. I had a quick hit last year about a AAA piece. So, I mean, like, there's just great wrestling everywhere around the world. So if you're interested, there's a lot of wrestling out there for folks to check out. And this is just a small piece of something that's a little bit different than what we covered. So we hope you were able to take something out of it, or maybe sparked your interest in something.
100%.
All right. So for TF Joker,
Cody Rhodes for Royal Rumble confirmed.
perhaps. And for me, Pretty Tony, we want to thank you for your time and letting us be a part of your day. And remember, be good to yourself, be good to each other. We will catch you next time. Happy New Year. Peace.